So let's talk about what I'm going to try today. In my never ending battle and weekly trying to do something a little bit different than previous weeks, I found an old photograph that I photographed of a model that I took up to near Mount Baldy. So you see this little photograph here. Well, I had it blown up to 11 by 17, and I lost a lot of detail, and it's really flat in terms of color. So I'm going to use a little bit of my knowledge of color, plus another photo that I found that I shot up there that's got better color, and it has nothing to do with it. It's down below here. Um, but I like the composition and the content of this. Now, I put these two paintings up on purpose because they both contain rocks. This was done all with palette knife from life in Sicily. And so the point that I'm making is I've understood a little bit of some of the color that can occur within rocks from working on location. This one I did in acrylics from a photograph as a demonstration painting for students. But you can see there's structure in the rocks. Okay, so I've painted rocks enough to kind of begin to understand it. Now the water is going to be a little bit tricky. I'm going to remove these. And we'll get back to what I'm doing now. So this is a 20 by 30 piece of stretched canvas that I kind of use a little bit of orange, white, and blue acrylic. The blue just to kill the orange so it wasn't too strong. And kind of toned a 30 by 20. So it's a little bit bigger than I've been doing in the past. So let's hope we can get it done, okay? I also have a piece of charcoal, a pencil here, and I thought I'd start with charcoal for a change. So I have a few key marks. This is basically the center. This is basically the center here. So I kind of have an idea that the woman is going to be in this area, right about in here. Okay. So those are just kind of my first indications. And I want to make sure I have that angle on the back just about right, which I do. I'm a little off. It's a little bit more this way. Then we're going to go up. The hat is going to sit about here. Top of the hat's going to sit about here. And we're just going to kind of start to indicate some of the proportional aspects of this piece. So we're just going to kind of get some of these in. This is the back. This would be basically about where the feet sit, right about in here, which is going to make the back of the skirt probably about here. So these are proportional indications. Knowing, as I've stated many times, that I could be wrong. I could be off on this stuff. So I don't feel married 100% to exactly what I'm sketching out. All right. So we're just going to kind of get, where does that shoulder line up? It lines up outside of this area. So the shoulder lines up about here. We have another arm coming down here. All right. Bottom of the skirt, again, is about here. Once we have enough information in here in terms of the figure, and doing figure is different than doing, by the way, if you guys are here, there's someone cutting a tree. So if you're hearing a buzzsaw, that's what's going on. So we had a tree fall in the neighborhood about, a month ago, the last storm. And they're finally getting around to cutting it. So that's what's going on. So any of the noise you hear, we apologize. So we're going to go, front of the face is going to go about here. Now, where does the angle of that face? It's one of the things I want to look at. The angle of the head is about like there. So I'm off in my first guess. It's about more like that, right? Now, once we begin to get that, now I'm going to say, where does that leg sit? Leg sits about here. Back leg is coming a little bit of a different direction, coming a little bit more of that direction. And we have a little bit of negative space between the two legs. Feet are going to sit about, one foot's going to sit about here. And the other foot is going to sit about here. One of the things that I've told people many times is as you draw, don't necessarily feel like you have to nail down one line, even though I was in art school, we had courses where we literally had to do that. But when you're drawing for the sake of painting, it's a little bit different. All right, so I think I have most of my proportions basically where I want them. I think I could be a little higher here. Okay. The hat is going to sit kind of this way down. She also has a little bit of a flower in the front of the hat, which I'm going to eliminate. I just think it looks kind of dumb with the woman up in the mountains overlooking a stream with a flower in her hat. So, of course, that's my hang up. That's not your hang up. So we're going to kind of do, so there's basically where that figure is going to sit, right? So before I even draw that figure in, I'm going to start to indicate some of the background elements. So, and those I'm going to put in a little stronger. This is going to be a rock in the background right about here, right? The rock she is standing on is going to sit about here, there. And then you have to distinguish. One of the things that gets really difficult in this is to distinguish the water from the rocks, because unfortunately everything went kind of cool. And what I've known, and I can see in other photographs that I've shot, is the water has a little bit more of a golden look because you're looking through the stream until it hits the white water. So I'm going to keep that concept in mind as I paint. But right now we're just getting indications of where things go. Rock back here, water line about here, bounces around a little bit, another rock behind.
It's cropping a little closer, so I didn't know if I should
okay.
back it up.
No, yeah, go ahead, back it up just a touch. Or you can raise it a touch.
Yeah, I'll do that. Sorry.
Anyway, so some of these rocks up in here, this rock here, front of this rock, which is about, I would say about here. There's a really neat shadow on it. I just noticed, really neat shadow. Down here, bottom of the other rock, and we're going to come in with some of these foreground rocks. Nice, this rock from right here. Looks like it comes from just above the middle, which is going to be about here. Now I may move things around as I get into massing elements in. And what I will do is I will start with the darks, elements, work my way into the medium tones up to where the sunlight, and the sunlight I'm going to make a little warmer. Big rock here. I love this big splash that comes down. Now, when I first looked at it, I couldn't tell, but it's a large splash that works its way down. So there's also a rock right about here. And what's happening is a couple things. Number one, my photograph's fuzzy. And, it's interesting. We were talking with another couple of artists actually yesterday, and we were talking about the pitfalls and the advantages of working from photographs that aren't always that great. And particularly if you've painted a lot from life, you then have to kind of take over, and you become pretty much the inventor of your scene, as opposed to just, so you're painting from a combination of knowledge and reference, which I think truthfully you should always do. It shouldn't just be, even when you're on location, it's not just that you're painting from whatever's in front of you. You're also painting from your experience and the knowledge that you've gained, whether be it in school, be it in trial and error and other things that you've done. We've all done trial and error, meaning, what do I mean by that? Meaning we've done bad paintings, huh? Those are the error, by the way. It's not the trial. The trial is hopefully your attempt, and the error is things that didn't work that you're going to learn as much from as things that did work. Now, I want to make sure she's standing correctly. In other words, I want to get the balance right. So if I take basically that leg and go straight up, goes up that arm, so I can see I'm way off. That leg is coming more from here, right about there, that angle, then the back of the foot, and the base of the foot, and I want to get that angle right. Then I'm going to look for the little negative space, this little V. And this is the other leg. The other leg is about here. So I'm a little off in that, but it's not too bad. I haven't made any big glaring mistakes. that I'm aware of. Maybe I have, and I'm just not aware of them. And once I start getting mass in there, I'm going to be able to really distinguish if something is right or something is wrong. So we're going to take this arm, we're going to bring it down. I want to get about where that hand sits, just about here. That would be the thumb. And I'm just indicating, I'm not drawing for the sake of drawing, which brings to mind something that I've discussed with other artists. When you draw for painting, do you draw the same way as if you're drawing for drawing? The answer is yes and no. Okay. The yes is because you start the same way. The no is because you probably are not going to finish it off as much as a drawing is going to stay a drawing. All right. Keep that in mind. That's actually an important point. A drawing that is going to remain a drawing is going to be a little bit different. So I want to come in here and get basically the hair. I want to find that space of that face, which I am not quite right on. I want to get it about here. Okay. The top of the hat is going to be about here. Part of the hat's going to be about here. A little bit on the back. All right, now I'm just going to get a little bit of that face in, just a little bit. I switched my grip. Don't like that. I want it over further, more hair. And then we're going to find where the nose intercepts. Now, if I look carefully, I can actually see a face back in that shadow. But as a painting, I may just decide I only want to put the face all in shadow. I'll make that decision as I go along, but that's about as far as I've got it right now. So we're just going to keep it at that. And I'm going to start painting. I have her a little short. I can see right now, meaning I'm probably a little long here. But as I lay in masses, I'm going to correct. So first thing I'm going to do is pick up my big old that I always use in the beginning. I'm going to get some darks laid in real quick. So I'm going to take umber. Now, I don't want to go quite that dark in the beginning because I always like to give myself room. And by room, I mean, I don't like to go to the extremes, meaning the extreme dark or the extreme light, simply so that I gives me the advantage of being able to do that at a later time. First thing we're going to do is start right about up in here. And I'm just going to kind of really go quickly. That's a little bit warmer than I wanted, but it's not, it's in the right value range. So we're going to go down here, come across here, up in here. Keep those edges really loose because they're not firm. You notice that they're not firm. So in that regard, by just doing indications like this, and you can keep the concept of thin to thick also when you're working large and quick. So you'll see me get this pattern down as quick as I can, the pattern of simple light, simple dark. Basically, because that's going to set everything else up. If I don't have that pattern basically correct, a rock could be larger, it could be smaller. So I'm not tremendously concerned with that part of it. Right here, off the back of her, we're going to do this up here, around that rock. So you can see how fast I'm able to do it. And I'm doing it this fast for two reasons, or not for because of two reasons. Number one, I have a little bit of terp, which allows me to get indications in quite quickly. And the other is I'm using a large brush. Those two factors are actually a lot more important than one might think. So we're going to come across from here, across to this side, up here, a little bit of dark behind that rock. Kind of draw in maybe where the side of that rock goes. There's a crease or crack, crevice, whatever you want to say. And then the underside is quite dark. So I already run out of paint. So I went back and remixed. Basically, I'm mixing brown, burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and just a touch of white into that color, along with a little bit of terp. All right, so we're going to go on the front of this rock right here. I'll try and point out what I'm looking at as I do it, so you guys don't get too lost here. I know it's really easy to say, what the heck
Like,
is that artist looking at? So
So Bob was saying he's grateful that you share this every week in such depth, and would like to hear your motivation for this generous gift to all who wish to improve.
You'd like to share it? Or-
No, he was saying he just wants to hear what was your motivation to
Oh,
start doing.
motivation. Okay, I have a few motivations, not just one. The first motivation was COVID, truthfully, and that's, I've taught now for God knows, it seems like 100 years, but a long, long time. And in teaching, and literally, and when I say I've taught at college, not just workshops. I've also taught workshops, many workshops I think I started doing workshops in the mid to late 70s, maybe early 80s, somewhere around there is when I really started doing workshops. But so COVID hits, right? Well, my teaching then went to Zoom because I think most teachers that taught at college level, everything went to Zoom. While it went to Zoom, years ago, some people are going to know this, some people aren't. I helped develop a study abroad program at the Academy of Art, where I'm currently department chairman and teach classes every semester. So during that time, upon setting up the study abroad program, I was very concerned that our host school, Sarisa, was going to fall apart because they're in Florence, Italy, and I was worried they're going to. So I said, I think I'm going to do a Zoom demo and see if I can raise some funds for the school over there. And so my motivation was to really start that. The other motivation was because I was at home, and I figured everyone else is stuck at home. We're talking March, middle of March, 19 or 19. but that's how long I've been teaching. 2020. So during that time, I just assumed I would kind of start this, and I did it a couple of weeks. And the Academy of Art asked, well, can we get in and help you with this? And I said, yeah. I'm not just doing it for the Academy, I'm doing it for the art world at large, so to speak, because I know everyone's kind of stuck at home and either can't paint or doesn't have any. And it kept me involved in making art. It kept me involved in the love of imparting information to other artists so that they maybe can be as fortunate as I am and be able to make a living doing this. And so it started with that. And from that, it's just grown. And, 2 years later, I'm still doing it. And it's part of my Friday routine. So yesterday I was teaching yesterday I actually wasn't teaching, but I was in San Francisco. And it was kind of an office day and a studio day. Just the days that I'm in there and I don't have to meet with students but fortunately, it's really fun because I get to meet with a lot of other instructors, and I'm talking damn good artists. Tuitsu Takashima, an unknown genius, as far as I'm concerned. As far as Greg Gandy was there. Greg Gandy is an incredible cityscape realist. He does all kinds of things, but to me, it's cityscapes. Jovic Jovic, who's one of our young upcoming artists. Jovic's one of these guys that can do anything. So it's really kind of fun. Sheldon Greenberg yesterday, one of our more experimental. It's great to get together with you. I miss it. That's one of the things I miss about is that kind of camaraderie. Now I don't get a chance to do a lot of the plein air. I know there's a plein air Maui going on. I don't get a chance to do a lot of that stuff simply because I teach. Right. So when I can, I'll do a workshop. But I also have my own business of producing art for galleries and commissions. In fact, I just got a nice commission in yesterday. But so I'm constantly balancing all those things. But truthfully, I've done that for how many years now? I've done that since 1970 when I first got out of school. So it's not difficult, but it's something I enjoy. So I like helping other, I used to say young people, but a lot of times it's not just young people. I don't want to say old people, mature artists that want to improve, as do I. And so what this has afforded me is to paint for all of you, to verbalize as I paint, which helps me learn. And hopefully kind of inspire a bunch of other people to want to make art. So that's kind of that's why I say it's not any one thing. It's a lot of different things that kind of go into the mix as to how I got into doing these Friday things. I don't know how much longer I'm going to do it. And I've been asked, what do you do with these Friday paintings? Well, I got a stack of them behind me. I've sold a few in galleries. I've had a few people have bought them. They've wanted to buy them. I eventually figure I'd probably do some sort of auction, but as of now, other than storage for a lot of this work, I don't have a lot of things that I've intended this for. But hopefully that kind of answers your question. Thanks for asking that, Bob, because no one's ever asked that. People and one last thing. I wanted to do this for free. I know a lot of artists are concerned with income. Fortunately, I'm not, because two things: my galleries have done really well for me. Thank you, galleries, all of you guys. The other reason is because I've always done a little bit of teaching, and so I've had a little bit of supplemental income. When I was illustrating, it was my illustration that was my supplemental income, which honestly was heavy duty. I was very busy as an illustrator. And a lot of you guys that knew me back then probably know that. And I wanted to get out of it simply because I wanted to see what kind of painting I wanted to do. Because as an illustrator, I was always doing someone else's artwork, which sounds terrible, but it taught me a lot. So anyway, back to what we're doing here. I'm massing tones in, just like I always do. And I'm trying to keep a freshness. One of the things that I've learned also in these quick paintings that I do is I don't have much of a choice as to keeping it fresh. I mean, the time frame forces that. And that's why when people have asked me, how do you help yourself not overwork a piece? Start setting a time frame and say, okay, I'm done. And then if you want to go back to it, say the next day, go back to it. Location work does wonders with that regard. I would be doing all my landscapes on location if we had internet on location. But because I don't have internet, I haven't been able to do them outside unless I, do them. I like doing it live. I prefer to do it live. One other last thing that I will mention in this regard to what Bob asked me. There's a lot of production videos, and I've done some, that are wonderful. They're fantastic, but they're edited too, So I thought, why not do something where you get to see all the flaws? And if it doesn't come out good, you get to see it not coming out good. All right. So because we all do that. What?
The unedited version of.
Oh yeah, this is unedited, which you can probably tell. Both unedited because of language. Thankfully, I don't swear a lot, but literally that's part of it. The other thing is to be able to, and I've always talked a lot when I paint, because, and there are artists that don't like it, that don't like talking because they don't feel either comfortable but if I'm in a studio and I'm painting, you notice instead of going blue, I'm going kind of orange or golden here, because that's the way that I've seen water, and I see it even in a couple of my other images. So I'm changing to a degree what I see, hopefully enhancing it. So, but the other thing is, you know, if I do a workshop, I do charge. That's a different type of a thing, because then I'm actually, besides demonstrating, talking like I talk now, I'm also trying to help people on their own pieces. So that's a totally different way of thinking, doing a workshop. This is not a workshop. This is basically watch Craig paint, and sometimes he'll do a pretty good painting. And sometimes it's watch Craig fail. I got to keep moving. And I know I've mentioned this so many times when I've painted. I have a lot of stuff to cover here, right? Now, I'm fortunate that I put a tone down, and the tone that I put down, if it comes through here and there, it's probably going to add a little pizzazz to it. That's a technical term, by the way. You always want pizzazz in your paintings. Do people still use the word pizzazz?
Sure.
Or am I just showing my advanced years? I mean, I don't know.
It's a good word.
It's a great word. People should use it more often. I don't know if I mentioned this. Was it 2 weekends ago? We went and saw the John Singer Sargent show at the Legion of Honor. I'll tell you what, every time I see great art, it makes me want to paint. I had one friend of mine who, he said when he saw great art, he'd get depressed. And it's because he wasn't there. None of us are. So huh?
He wasn't there technically, you mean?
Yeah.
Ability.
Yeah, ability wise, he's not there. He's not up to that level. But you know what? It just makes you want to try even harder. And you discover things. You look at it and you say, oh, look what he did here. Well, look what he did here. Oh, you know what? I got to think about that more. So it's a damn good show, first of all. Okay, so I'm painting the shadows on her dress, and I'm painting them slightly on the blue-gray side, simply because that's what color the sky is. The sky is a cooler color. So, and the other thing that I didn't talk about is, where the hell is the light coming from when you look at this? Because it gets real confusing. With a light, if I look at her skirt, she's catching light here. She's also catching a little light here, the top of the hat. The light is coming slightly from behind, but about like this. So it's able to hit this plane, and it's able to hit this plane, and then all the top. So the top of the rocks are probably getting the strongest light of the other elements. As far as the figure goes, it's the light is hitting pretty much where I'm putting it, or I shouldn't say where I'm putting it. I'm putting the shadow. And be free and be wrong. I probably cannot say that enough. And I know when I speak to my classes, as I did on last Tuesday, I remember I gave a talk about being wrong, about give yourself your permission, because that's how you're going to improve. Every stroke you put down can't be right. It just can't be. I don't think it is. I don't think Rembrandt put down every stroke, because I wasn't around at his time, that was 100% correct. I don't think I think you search. We all, as we're painting, we search. We also learn better tricks in terms of indication, and we can learn it from people, from other instructors. We can also learn it by trial and error on our own. Try something, doesn't work. Well, I'm not doing that again. Or maybe I did it wrong. Okay. I'm jumping around. I do that intentionally. Now, as it gets a lot darker here than it does here, this is still not bright light. So let's take, and I haven't mentioned my palette. I'm going to take my unbleached titanium, which I have. I have titanium white. I have yellow, Naples yellow, yellow ochre, cat orange hue, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, sap green, and burnt umber. Burnt umber is my dark today. Some of you, nobody's asked, but some of you say, well, what happened to your love of asphaltum? Still have it, just haven't used it lately. And I switch back and forth palettes a lot. I still have the workhorse, basically, palette. I always have ochre, always have alizarin, always have ultramarine blue, and always have, not always, but pretty much I have sap green a lot, and either an umber or an asphaltum. Unless I go to what we would call a limited palette, what some people like to call a Zorn palette. But if I go to a limited palette, then I may switch off.
Did you say that was cat orange hue?
What was that?
Was that cat orange hue?
Cat orange hue. I don't always have that down, but I did today. Sometimes I'm just feeling out my palette as I paint, and what happens is I'll change it. If I really realize along the way I do need a color, I'll add that color to my palette. So I've lightened it up a little bit because we have lighter areas of shadow right in here. A little lighter right in here. That's still not light. It may look light, it's not light. A lot of times, and because I painted women in white before, or men in white shirts, either one, I know that you get color variations in white. So I know that very often as you get into the recesses, it'll warm up, and I can use either an umber or an orange or some sort of color like that. And it gives a little vitality so it doesn't look so boring. I don't like boring. Color will help boring. Design will help boring, meaning your composition. And value can help. All of those can help the feeling of something looking too boring. So we're going here, up in here. I want to move around. I want to get the shadow on that hat a little bit lighter. It's about here. Probably went too far back with it, but I'll carve it later. Don't be afraid. Put it in there, be a little wrong, fix it later. So I just stood back. Everything's looking okay. I'm 30 minutes, or I'm about 25 minutes into it, and I am not as far as I'd like to be. So I've got to get these masses of rocks in before I do anything else right now. So I don't have to worry about them. They're very close to this kind of a color. So I'm going to take my unbleached titanium, a little bit of ultramarine blue. Now the ultramarine blue is going to darken it. So what I have to do is I have to come back with some white to get it back to that value that it once was. And I'm going to start testing right here. I want it a little darker, and I'm going to put a little bit more medium into it. Okay. So we're going to start here, maybe a little darker, a little more ultramarine, a little maybe brown mixed in or orange mixed into that to kind of mellow, so it doesn't go too much of a blue. There we go. Let's get these tones in here as fast as possible. Pretty much the way I see them, not trying to be 100% accurate, but just kind of laying them in with feeling, with kind of, you're thinking structure, but you're also thinking, I want this thing to feel good. That's a more difficult thing to describe to people, by the way. How do you paint feeling into something? You ever think about that? I do. You can do a lot. I mean, you can deal with value, you can deal with color, you can deal with technique. All of those can contribute. And I think if you use them all, you're probably better off than just using one.
So Elaine wants to know why 2 different titaniums.
Good question. Lazy. You don't need titanium buff or titanium, unbleached titanium. You don't need it. I can get to a duller tone faster. That's all. Pretty much you can stay with almost, why I don't have 2 blues out. I don't have 2 yellows. I do have 2 yellows out. I've got yellow ochre and Naples yellow. But generally speaking, I start with 1 of each color, and if I need 2, I will eventually get 2. it's kind of chewed up in here, the rock. And I don't mean chewed up, but literally there's a lot of berry direction. So I want to put some different, kind of hammer that in there a little bit. Also, I see a little darker here. That one a little too blue. So what do? I throw a little extra brown into that color and come back and do it one more time. Brown's warm. It will kind of counter the blue. Get a little bit up in here. These are darker. So I can take the brown, the blue. Well, I just threw too much blue in, by the way. One of these days, I'll figure out how you guys can see my palette, because I know that helps. That's why I kind of try and describe to you. I'm just painting the feeling, a little too blue, of the rock surfaces, because it's very abstracted up here. I don't want to get too picky. I want it to feel kind of loose and almost abstract. One of the things I was talking to a class about, we're talking about John Singer Sargent a second ago. I've noticed this for years, but it became even more evident when I was looking at his original work, and that is, and particularly his portraits, even though there's a lot of work there that's not portrait. In fact, there's not a lot of portrait. But one of the things that I noticed is the further away he gets from the face, the more indicative, the more just a big sloppy old stroke sometimes goes in and does the work. And we don't notice it because the face is so beautiful, but the stroke has character. And that's something that you begin to realize, and you say, now, how do I get character into my painting? And once again, it's a combination of technique, color, and value. So we're chewing that up a little bit. We got kind of some of the darks in here, some darks going across here. It's a really nice shadow being cast. I'm going to make it kind of violet, I think. I see it kind of that way, and it's on the rock below the young lady. I won't tell you who this model is because she probably wouldn't want me to, but she's a great artist. Now, at this time, she was doing more modeling, but now she's a fantastic figurative painter. Okay, so there's that beautiful, that's a nice violet color. And by making it that way, what happens is I'm adding some interesting color, keeping the value in check. Now, for years, I taught a class called Quick Studies. And one of the exercises that I always give in class is something called exaggerated color. And what that means is exaggerate the color that you see without exaggerating the value. So maybe something slightly red, you make it a hell of a lot more red, but don't change the value, because you change the value and you're going to change the feeling of the structure. So it's conceptually, it's not that difficult. Technically, it's very difficult. It's practice. It's another way of learning color, another way of learning what you can do with color. Let's put it that way. Not just learning color, but what can I do with color? Besides the color that I see in front of me, is there anything I can do to enhance that? People always refer to Joaquin Sorolla as somebody who would exaggerate, but his colors are not exaggerated. They may be slightly, but they're still in the very muted gray stages. And then here and there, he'll zing a color. The color leans a little blue. He'll push it a little bluer. So that's really what it comes down to when I say exaggerate. So here's my goal. That in the next 30 minutes, I want most of this taken care of so that I can really concentrate on the girl and the water in the last. So I have a goal. And it just means if I see myself falling behind that goal, then what I will do is I'll probably shut up and really slap paint on fast and furious. And we move that color around. When I put it in one spot, if I can see it elsewhere, I will put that color. So what happens is you aren't mixing the same color all the time. And I'd rather paint too much right now than not enough. I'd rather cover too much, let's put it that way. Because at least I have something down there that I can adjust. Because what you do is you make a guesstimate. And then you adjust that guesstimate. Depending on the time you have. On a plein air piece, you'll probably do less adjusting because you just don't have the time. But in a more studio type piece, you can adjust forever. The problem is, be careful about adjusting forever, because pretty soon you're going to just muck up the whole look of your painting. You want to keep it. You want to keep a freshness. See, in here we see some. We're going to start. I guess got to start to get some more lights in it. Down in here, I see a little bit of color variation. We want to get a little color variation in that rock, but some of that's going to be dark, so I'm going to add later. I want to start to get some of the lights. So I'm going to go back to my unbleached titanium, and I'm going to lay out a little bit more because I used way too much of it. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. Or it's excuse me, I call it. This happens to be a Gamblin, and it's called titanium buff. Some brands call it unbleached titanium, so I'm used to that. So I just mix my titanium buff with some medium back into kind of some of these colors. So I have a little bit of that. So let's test it. It's a little too blue for me. I'm going to throw a little bit of ochre and Naples into that, and let's see what happens.
So Laurel has a question. She thinks the character of a stroke has a lot to do with the swing of your brush. How are you interpreting and transitioning your impression? You interpret it through load of paint, wetness of paint, and pressure. Well, there's another factor. Load of paint. What am I painting into? Wet paint, dry paint? That's going to affect the way that I use the brush. And lastly, the facet of the brush and the pressure that I apply the paint with. That pressure is something that is not thought about and not talked about. Artists do it generally intuitively. And it really is a matter of knowing, and you see how I lift up there? I want a softer edge, so I don't want to labor that, but I know I can get a softer edge by lifting up lightly on that brush. So you learn about mark making through mark making. I guess that stands to reason, huh? But that's a wonderful, wonderful question, because it really is a factor. Boy, I don't like that enters in a lot to all forms of painting. Is all painting, abstract, still life, portraiture, realism, super realism, all forms of painting is just a matter of making nice marks with the right color and the right value. And there's your key. Got to do all those things. You not only have to have nice marks, but you have to have the right color and right value. Thankfully, it's hard to do. And I say that simply due to the fact that it took me forever. And I'm still going through it. I still feel like I'm going through the whole aspect of making my paintings better, making more interesting marks, more meaningful marks. And when those are wrong, more colors that work. So it's very casual in some cases and very controlled. So and I think I've used this term in some of these demonstrations, but if not, I'll use it now. I like to think of paintings as a form of a combination of energy and control. Energy is the bravura, so to speak, that you put your paint on with. That kind of, when you're saying control, is understanding where you need to come in and start to get the thing to work, because it's starting to get a little bit out of control. So it's a combination of always working with those two factors. Okay. So we're gonna gotta get dark. Now we're gonna go on this rock. We're gonna add more lights on the rocks later, but right now we're just gonna get as much as I can, as quickly as I can. And if I'm wrong, which I'm gonna be in many instances, but I might be wrong and it still might work okay. Something you don't think about too often. And that's, I think that's where learning steps in, is when you're wrong, but you find out that it works okay. And that's one of the benefits of working quickly. There are drawbacks to working quickly too. Just so everything isn't like, oh, all I have to do is work quickly and I'll be a better painter. No, there's drawbacks. I don't work quickly on studio works. I work a little bit more rapidly, or a little less rapidly than I am now. But the difference is I will stand back a lot more. I will make a lot of more decisions than I do when I'm working like this. Demonstrating, people always say, well, you paint fast. I hear this a lot from people. I say, no, I demonstrate fast. All right. So I add a lot of white to that color because we're going to come in right here. We're going to hit these top surfaces. I want kind of a rough edge. That's why I'm using this brush and I'm just barely touching it down.
So Lynn was saying, should she practice a brush stroke with just one color? And which one would it be to play in? Transparent?
Well, it doesn't matter. The key is try it with different brushes, with different pressures, and with different degrees of wetness of your paint. It's not any one of those things. And then practice painting into, a good form of practice. Practice painting an apple. Set an apple up in front of you, light it. Practice painting that apple from the inside out. I don't mean inside the apple, but from the middle out, so to speak. So you're not painting, you're painting surfaces, and you haven't defined the edge of that apple. In fact, sometimes you can just paint a big red smudge and then build an apple out of that. That'll really, stuff like that. I'm just using an apple, for example, but you can use anything. But stuff like that will teach you a lot. Trust me, a lot. Okay, getting some of these big surfaces in. I got to keep an eye on my time. Still a little bit behind where I'd like to be. But I'm going to, and it has nothing to do with scale, by the way. Just because this is bigger, this has absolutely nothing to do with scale. It has to do with the amount of stuff going on and the textures I'm trying to create. And I am inventing certain colors. Not a lot. I'm still using the basics of what I see. And that's beginning to work. Let's get these other light ones in down here. Let's see if I can get all that in the next 10 minutes. So I have 5 minutes to fuss on the water, and then I can start to go back on things. I'm still on the little bit on the cold side, which I don't know if that bothers me or not. I can't tell you. If it is, I will enhance it later, hopefully. I'm using the same brush. The reason I use this brush a lot in these quick ones is because I cannot make over-controlled marks. I can control this brush to a degree, but I can control a brush, say, like this a lot more than I can control a brush like this. But I want these strokes to feel, have more character. And to go back to what we talked about a little bit ago about the kind of marks that you make. One of the comments, I've said this to students over and over again: stay with a brush that's too large. Stay with a brush that's too large. Don't go back and say, I see a line, so I'm going to grab a brush I can make a line with. No, don't grab a brush you can make a line with. Grab a brush like this and make your line that way. And then smear it a little bit if you have to. Don't make that perfect line. Let that evolve if you need it.
Laura wants to know if you like using earth colored paint for more natural colored rocks.
I don't know. Not necessarily. I only have one earth color on my palette really, which is burnt umber. So I guess the answer would probably be no. I don't even have burnt sienna out this time. Usually I'll have some burnt sienna. I don't. This is a better brush than this right now. I'm getting more interesting marks. Should have been using that earlier. Okay. Let's get these big, a little bit more medium. The medium helps. Medium acts like an extender. An extender is something you can make longer marks with. So you don't have to keep. So I just use paint, just use pure paint, no medium. And your medium might be turp, or it might be, in this case, I just dipped into a little bit of, what is that? Safflower oil that I happen to have handy. But it could be solvent-free gel. It could be a little turp. So the extender, it will allow you to make marks from a longer period of time. And I went back to since I got light in here, I took this brush I was just using and mixed up a dark. That way I don't have to clean my brush back to dark, to light to dark, to light to dark. So if you have two, one for your darks, and that's a very common thing for many artists to do, is to use more than one brush. It's a little flat in here, but we'll see what I can do later on. Okay. Right there. Oh, there's a beautiful purple shadow. You see that purple shadow? I should have put it in earlier. I'm grabbing that brush. Boy, is that a crummy brush. And I'm going to mix up almost that kind of violet-y. So ultramarine blue, white, and a little bit of alizarin. Too much alizarin. This is probably pretty good right about here. Not bad. Okay. Now that's real dry, so I'm having a hard time putting it down. So I added turp. And you can see how much easier that's going down with a little bit of turp in there. I like that color. I might want to throw that into a few more rocks. A little bit of green too. Now that when I look at this rock, I can feel slight green. I can feel a slight ochre here and there. Down here, it's a little greenish brown kind of down in there. So I'm just kind of guessing on colors. If I'm off, rocks can be any color too. Keep that in mind. It's another thing I haven't mentioned is rocks there's different types. I mean, anybody that geology, which I'm not, understands that rocks can have different kind of minerals depending on the type of rock and even the character of the rock. Round river rocks can be really rounded. I don't like round river type rocks. I much prefer more sculpted. So very often I'll plane the rocks out, so to speak, meaning I will really try and create planes. So I'm switching back and forth in brushes right now. You guys can see too. I've got 3 brushes here. One with kind of this violet tone, one with my darks, and this. So I don't always do that, but time-wise, it's going to help me. Okay. Let me stand back. It's okay. That's all I can say. It's okay. See, I don't want to go too white because I want the white water to really stand out. So I'm going to go in with this right now. Soften that edge a little bit. I just use a lighter touch to soften the edge. So now I'm just using the side of the brush because I want the stroke to come down and dissipate. Okay. And where am I at? I want to get this done in the next 3 or 4 minutes. Otherwise, I'm going to put myself into a bind at the end, I know. And we don't want to do that. I don't want to disappoint me or you. So I'm trying to leave some of these areas. And if I have to smear into them, sometimes that'll really add even more character. See, I like the look that I got there. Now we're going to come down the front of the rock. Oh, I like that stroke. And by pressing, I pulled out a little extra blue. I wasn't planning on that, but I don't mind it at all. And this is really kind of scrubby down in here, so I'm going to paint it that way. A little bit of a darkness right about here. And all I did is I just picked up some of that violet. Go back in here. That may be all I get done on those rocks. Again, the further I'm away from what you might consider a focus, the more abstract it's going to become. I can always have room to take that dark and go, oof, push it. A little bit more brown, a little bit more blue, go up, over, and then let it blend into that area right in there. Okay. So we've created that. That's actually working okay. And over here, a little darker. So I can take that same color I got in the brush and we'll go here, here. It's got a lot of cool in it. And I remember these rocks, even though this was well over 30 years ago. But I do remember painting these rocks enough that there were cools and warms in them. Go back to my lighter color. I have a lot of room to get lights, by the way. Even though it looks like I have a lot of light in here, I don't. That light that I have is still similar to this value. So I have a lot of room that I can push lights in if I need to. That's okay. That's as good as it's going to get. Let's put it that way. Probably not going to get a little darker right on that edge right there. And all I did is I picked up a little brown and blue into the color I already had on the brush, which was a light color. So put that in there, put a couple darks in here, down in here, work it on over, and then kind of smear it up in here. Energy and control. So I'm going to get into the water now. Where am I at? I'm where I want to be. And I'm not exactly where I want to be, but I'm closer. I did that 10-minute, with the exception of that rock, I did that 10-minute indication in the time frame I was looking at. This is all water down here. Okay. So we want to start to get some water in. And for the underpainting of the water, I'm going to keep it warm. I'm going to go back to the ochre. I'm going to warm the ochre up probably with a little bit of umber. And I think it was around in here. Well, that's really, I had a lot more umber in it. Ochre and umber. And we're going to start here. I'm going to be coming over it with some cools too, by the way, just so you know. It's going to work its way down these rocks in here. And wherever it sits, it's going to show more of this kind of color. Wherever it's moving, it's probably going to change the color a little bit more. So as we go further, it's like painting the ocean. If you're ever, it's fun to paint the ocean on location because I've been with people and they go, "What the hell do I do?" I said, watch, just look at it. Just look at it. I don't care if you look at it for 10, 20 minutes. Just look at it. All right. Eventually, you're going to see patterns emerge, rhythms emerge. Those are what you're going to paint. And you're going to indicate them. You're not going to try and render them. You try and render them and you're going to be sorry. Okay. Now the water comes down and back in here, it's in shadow. So if that dark is back in there, it's going to be more in that range. And there's a lot of cool because the sky gets to it back in there. And the white water is definitely cool. So I need to do one thing here that I just spotted as I was doing that. And that is fix this rock with this background. There we go. Boy, as that transition, as I can just almost get a warm in some of those transition tones right in there. Okay. All right, let's keep going with the water. I'm going to start with the white water, and I'm going to start a little too blue. Okay. With that in mind, I cleaned my brush. I grabbed white, a lot of white, and a little bit of ultramarine. Probably more than I needed, but it's blue. It's a lighter blue than probably a number 2 in value. But let's start back here. Have to have a different kind of edge to it. It's in shadow. It's not strong. A little bit more blue, because as the water rushes down, I think I'm going to take that blue and make it slightly violet. So what I've done, I said the word slightly, and then I picked up way too much. There we go. I think that's a much better. Let's see what this is. I don't think it's dark enough, but I think I'm about right here. Almost dark enough. It's in the violet. It's in the blue violet range. There. Let's do that. Let's get. This is underpainting for the white water. And darker because it's in shadow now, but still slightly violet. And it's going to come this way down around here because it starts getting, and then it comes back in here. Looks like it. I don't know if that's water or a rock there, but I know I can see that down here it's water as it comes around the front of this rock. And even my bad photo, I can see it getting cool, getting blue. So we want to paint that with enough energy so it feels like the water is moving. Okay, down right here where the water comes down and as it splashes, right at that point, we're going to hit a little bit of a cool. We're going to hit, so we kind of went through the warms. Now I'm going through the cools. One of the things that I can see I need to do is I'm probably going to have to bring the water up over this, which is okay with me, which means this is probably going to come up a little higher. So I'm going to go a little whiter now with that white water. And for that, I'm going to add medium and white to the color I was just using. What we're going to do is we're going to come in right there. And you see how we get the water looking like it's rushing, just literally the whatever direction. Now, when it hits down here, it splashes behind that rock. There's a rock right there, and a little bit darker as it moves over underneath this rock. It's working, and I'm getting a little color into it too, which is making me feel pretty good. So it's going to come down here, gets more of the white water. So where the water is resting, I'm keeping it ochre. And where the water tends to feel like it's moving, I'm making it whiter and cooler. And I'm not going all the way to the lightest light I can get. And I'm trying to distinguish, similar to the value of the top of the rock, but I'm trying to distinguish the color of it from the top of the rock. Okay, so we're going to keep moving. Down in here, we're going to get a little bit whiter. As it comes up from behind that rock, which is right there. And it splashes down here. It's working. I got to keep backing up to tell because this is a pretty good size canvas, and I can really misjudge it if I stay too close to it for too long. Got to get more white. Eventually, I'm going to use a warm white on that, by the way. And a little whiter. Maybe a little unbleached this time because it's a little bit warmer. So we're going to go right where it splashes, which is right about here. Comes down. There's a little chirp. It paint's a little bit dry. There we go. And there's water coming down here, but it's in deep shadow. So I'm going to add more of my blue and alizarin, get it, and maybe a little brown to dull it down. I don't want it too pretty. As it comes out into the light, it's going to get more of a warm white on it. But I want to move some of that cool blue and warm, because I do see warms down here too. And these rocks that are below the water, and then it gets really dark. Okay. Well, let's see. Where am I at? I want to be able to get into the woman in a second. So whiter with a little maples this time and a little unbleached titanium. I'm going to actually throw more white out onto my palette, and we're going to go really light right there. Let me get more white out of my palette. I'm using a lot of white now. Okay. Squeezed it out, picked it up. So we're letting the sunlight get to the water now. I'm just taking pure white, putting it right into that color I already have down there. Go around that rock, behind it, up. Looks like it sneaks down there too. Okay, that's working. I just stood back. I was wondering whether the whole thing was coming together or not. So I had to get back to double check. This little water sneaks up, looks like in here. A little tributary there. Got to move this along fast enough so that I have at least a minimum of 20 minutes to indicate the lady. Just a real dry. Real dry. Sneaks over these rocks. And then it really puddles and gets real bright right there. I'm going to go put a little bit of blue back into it. I want to get some variations. I don't want it to get too flat on me. So water sneaking down here. There's probably water coming from all different directions because this is not a stream that is literally has one direction. So I'm going to throw a little more ochre into that color right there. This is where you got to be careful that I've seen students want to paint polka dots for the feeling of the water, and you can't. The water is moving. Camera will freeze it. That's good enough right now. It's about as good as I'm going to get in this amount of time. But I'm going to go back right up in here with the whiter water, right about in here. A little bit in here. Told you I was going to come back and add a little sunlight to that. That's just basically white with a little maples and okay, for right now, I'm going to hold off and go right to her. And let's see what we can do. For that, I am going to grab a different brush. Oh, I don't want to spend time looking, so I'm just going to start with this. And we're going to start with the skin, which is warm. So I'm going to take umber. We're going to try and lay that arm in. Not warm enough. I'm going to throw a little cat orange into it. I don't have, if I had, I want to keep saying alizarin crimson. No, if I had burnt sienna down, I'd probably be using that. But I can use these colors to almost mix up a burnt sienna type color. That looks pretty good. I'm not crazy about this brush though. Wish I need to grab one of my rosemaries, a better brush. A little bit, there we go. Let's get that base in there, same way. A little more red. I'm going to darken it and redden it, and we'll get the area right there. Works pretty good. I'm going to get a little bit of a smaller brush, work the hand in. Well, let's see. Spread it number 2, and then I'm going to switch over to my rosemary. We're going to go with the shape of that hand, going back, making sure I get that wrist up there. It looks okay. I wanted to see where it looked like I had that hand a little too low, but I don't think so. A little darker. I went a little too dark, I think, but I need to get darker anyway. So umber and alizarin is what I'm using as I'm darkening. And the other arm is quite a bit darker and was still warm. And it's right about here. It's working hand small. I just haven't finished it. It's actually not small. I just haven't finished it, but I need to kind of block it in a little bit more. So okay, let's see that. A little bit better. Not quite there. Just got proportions a little off, but it's not too terrible. Let's get that other hand in, which is going to sit right about here. Thumb's going to come over. Okay, let's go to the hair now. I just don't like that one brush. What brush do I have here available for me? I don't like that brush either. I'm going to stay with that. Let's get that hair. I'm going to take burnt umber into that color because I want it dark. It's blonde hair. Glow. It's got a nice light edge on it. I need to paint that background in, which I should have done earlier. It's kind of cool. And it's just a myriad of rocks and breakup of elements back there. So I just use kind of a dull blue, dull meaning it's grade, that I've used elsewhere. Get it down. And I'm going to get a little bit of light on the top of this rock, which I didn't get earlier. Okay. Let's keep going. Gonna go with the light on the top of the dress. So this is probably going to be my lightest light, which is going to be the closest to a white. There's a brush I think I can use. Okay, Naples and white. A lot of white. More white than Naples. So what I'm doing is I'm using the Naples to warm up the white, and we're doing this. And that worked pretty well. A little bit of light, just edging right about there and the top of that arm. And if I'm use this color into my shadow color, which is right here, I can lighten it up a little bit. And by pushing the color into the color, I'm not going as white as that, which is great. I don't want it as white. Now I do need to get, I'm going to keep my eye on the time. I got about 20 minutes. So I'm really behind where I'd like to be, but we're still going to try and pull it off. There we go. Now I'm going to hit the light on the front of the dress. I'm going to use a little bit of a solvent-free gel with it because I think it'll help. I can get it down. There we go. So we're getting her to pop now. That's okay. It's basically working. You notice I said basically? It's because it's working, but it could be better. A little darker there. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the hair. I'm going to use a crummy brush. So I will get a better quality to it with this brush, more of a hair-like quality. Little brighter, not bright as bright as I could be, a little brighter and warm. So let's try it again. That's better. I got to make it a lot shorter. I'm going to go back to part of the dress, correct her body a little bit, right about here. I think I'm okay there. I think I can cut in a little bit, right about, give that arm a better shape. Darker right there. Let me get the hair to overlap that face more. Went a little cold, a little too blue. Did not want that, so I went back with umber. She's got some nice light up on the top of her hair. Some more darks down in here, which is going to help define. A little light on the back of her hair. I'm going to use more white but not quite as white. But we're going to go right about here. We have some light hitting on the back of her hair now. Show off the front. Get some darks in the background right there. A few darks back here. Don't like that right there. It's got to come up higher. And I made her hair a little longer. Not intentionally. The front part of her hair, I see, is a little more golden. We're going to get the hat in there in a second. So we started to get that. Hand's not quite as good as I wanted, but I'm not going to fuss on it right now. I want to get the hat. So I'm going to take this little, see what I can do with this rosemary that I've got. Go back to the shadow. So this is what I would call control. And a little bit of light, not quite as bright, but still pretty bright on the back of that hat, which looks like it goes about there. Little bit of a light on a couple of the rocks behind the head, right about here. And not quite as light, a little bit more in the, but so we can show the silhouette off. It's working, not real crazy about a couple things in the head. So I'm going to do a little bit of work and a little bit of dark and a little bit more right in there. And I almost see an eye shape back in there. And then it becomes a shadow that goes under the hat and down on the front of the face. That's working okay. We'll go back into the arm now. I want to slip my time. Okay, I've got about 10 minutes. So I do have a little bit of time to go back into a couple of the rocks. And she's got a beautiful light on her, the back of her arm. I'm going to warm it up a little bit. And it's right here. Go back to the dress color because I wiped it out. I want to pick that up again. This part of it. A little bit on the back of her arm, so I get this to read a little bit better. I don't like the shape of that arm and hand that much. I think the hand definitely needs work. Get a little bit of light, right, lighter than the dress on the rock behind, which helps define that arm, which is right there. We get it there. Oh, she's wearing a bracelet. A little bit there. Gets a little bit of a dark accent right about there, which helps it drive. A little bit more shadow detail. Don't like using this brush too much, but I don't have much of a choice. So she's coming out pretty good. Her color could definitely be improved. And I could probably go back into her and hit a little bit of shadow detail right about as it comes out from behind the arm. Got a little bit of indication back in there. That helps a little bit. You need a little bit of letting a little too much of that background color come through. Oh, you know what I need to do? I need to put some light on this part of the hand and the thumb. Back of the hand. It's a little brighter than I wanted, but it's That's what I ended up with. Well, that works okay. That works better than I thought. Let's put it down. Don't like the bottom of her chin. There's nothing wrong with the bottom of her chin. It's the painting I've done. Painted from models before saying, geez, I don't like the way her eyes look. And then I had, whoa, it's not your eyes, it's my painting of your eyes. You got to kind of remind that I'm not criticizing the model. I'm criticizing my painting. So at this point, it's a matter of what do I feel I need to really do to get this thing to come off well. This is a little bit of a void, so I want a little bit of a transition tone from here. And if I study the rock carefully, I can see areas of detail here and there in that shadow area. So you can keep going back and adding that. The same with that water. We can move that water a little bit more because I'm not totally sold on it right now. That rock could probably stand to have a little bit more light on it. So I take my white and my Naples, much the same as her dress, maybe a little unbleached titanium so it doesn't go quite as bright. And we can start to hit top planes.
So Laurel would like to know, compositionally, how are you leading your eye?
How am I leading my eye? Well, this has got the most contrast and most color variation. So I'm leading my eye to, I hope, to the figure first. From the figure, it's working its way down the background. Oh, crap. Sorry about this, you guys. I didn't get her feet in. I just looked at that and I went, I'm going to get this whole thing done without having her feet. So let's get her shadow color. It's a little bit lighter in the background, a little bit warmer. So that's probably a little on the cold side. But to answer your question, what I'm trying to do is get the figure to be and then get the feet. So the viewer gets the feeling of moving from the background down through here. I haven't pushed it as far as I need to. And it's a time thing. So for example, this is here and there's more water kind of coming that way. So I could easily push more, but she's got to be the focal point. So I do want her to come off. And that's why when I looked and I said, man, I don't have her feet in there. I just realized it. So there's one. The other leg, which is in shadow, is a little bit warmer. So I just threw whatever color I was working with, this color, I just threw some more of the cat orange into it. And we'll paint that shadow of that leg and that foot. And this foot comes all the way down and the toes are right about in there. And there's a little core on the leg, a little bit, not much. As it comes out from underneath the dress, it's darker at this point. So I darkened it and I let that come down. Same with this one. It's a little darker. And you let that blend down. That looks pretty good. Well, I've got that color mixed up. I want to get her thumb in a little bit better. I didn't bring it down far enough. Okay. So now I want to put the light on her. So we're going to go back to the warm meaning it's as light as the dress, but I threw a little bit of cat orange into it, just a touch, just to warm it up. And it's pretty harsh on her feet. There's one almost. I stood back and it looks good enough for me to leave it. Well, it looks like too big of a foot to me. So trim it down here. Okay, let's get that other foot in. What are we doing here? Got just about 5 minutes. So I talked to a class on Wednesday, and I tried to explain it this way. What this is is a pretty substantial lay-in. Now, depending on the artist, whoever the artist may be, for many artists, this is a finished painting. For me, it's not. For many artists, it's ultra sloppy. It just depends upon what you envision as more of a finished type of a piece. Every artist is going to be different. It's what makes art so cool. So you may like looser, more undone pieces, or you may like more refined pieces. Whatever the case, this is a good starting point or finishing point, depending on what you think you want to achieve. So it's, all art, I call these, people have asked, these are really very spontaneous lay-ins. Sometimes I've gone in and done a little bit of work. Generally, I don't do much. I'll work maybe 10 to 15 minutes more on anyone, just because I'm not trying to turn these into a studio type of a painting that I would do if I were going to really do what we might call a studio piece. However, there are many individuals that actually prefer more undeveloped pieces. And I think it's because it feels more paint-like. And as I have said, I tend to like that kind of stuff too when I see other artists work, because you feel the artist's hand a little bit more. You don't feel that the artist has hidden all of the way he's put the paint down. So, depending on your goals, everybody's goals are going to be a little different. My goal is to make it look like a complete statement. I use that phrase a lot. So it looks like a completed statement at whatever stage it's at, whatever stage I'm going to leave a painting. Let's say I'm going to work on this for 2 more days. Okay. I'm not, but let's just say I'm going to do. At the stage that I say, okay, I'm quitting, I want it to feel like a completed statement. I don't want it to feel like, what the hell? What is that? I don't want it to be too abstracted. I want it to feel like it's going the right direction. Otherwise, what I will do very often is go back and simplify things, go back and make things a little bit, because if it's not working, it probably was working at some stage. Go back to that stage. Go back to the stage when it didn't bug you. It looked good. And then continue from that stage. And that's that line that painting is not only a forward direction. Very often it's forward, backward, and we all kind of keep going there until we arrive at what we think is a completed statement, completed painting that we feel comfortable leaving it with. As a completed statement, this is okay. This area could probably stand to have a little bit more work. This now, I didn't put a real heavy duty dark into that. So I'm going to take my last couple of minutes and I'm just going to push a little bit darker in, particularly as it gets down to the bottom. So what I've done is, originally I didn't have white in that color. This time I've got just blue and brown. I'm going to go a little bit more brown because it's feeling a little blue. Go a little bit like this. Front, got a couple crevices that I can kind of almost feel. That helped that rock. That rock now does not look as vacant. This I don't mind. The last thing I'm going to do, very last thing, is a couple of branches up behind her with my little liner. A lot of medium, a lot of terp this time because the paint's got to be pretty wet. And what we see is one kind of coming from here and another one working its way down there. And we put those in at the end simply because they sit on top. You don't want to put things on top and then have to paint around them the whole painting. So we can just put a few branches in. And there's some of them may have a little light on them, some of them may not. Like there's one up, little light right about here. And that way, if you get enough of them overlapping, all that abstract rock stuff that I did in the beginning will start to make more sense. It'll start to feel like it's something back there. I see a little bit of a coming out right here, breaking, which is kind of nice. It breaks this shape. And that's what's in here. Last but not least, this, get a few little, these are the linear work that you do. It's more calligraphic than it is painting a big surface. You're painting more details. Anyway, that starts to work. It's working okay. It's not, the water definitely could use a lot more layers. But for all intents and purposes, it does what I was kind of hoping it would do, which is conveys the feeling of, you know, the woman, the rushing water. I can see a lot more. Oh, I like that. That's a little Dan McCaw stroke, by the way, you guys.
So complicated.
Anyway, you get the feeling. Let me stand back and see if I like it. So I'm back about 10 feet now. Looks a lot better at 10 feet than it does at 2 feet. Okay. Which is what you want. What you want. You see a lot of the artist's hand up close. Some is good, some not so good. But, you know, I let the viewer be the judge of that. There's parts I definitely think work well, and there's parts that I think could be better. But hell, if I worked in this 3 days, I'd feel the same way. I'd feel that there's parts that could be better and parts that work well. In any event, thank you all. And thanks for that question, Bob. I really appreciate that question about what motivated me to get in to start doing these things. So hopefully you guys got something out of this. I got a covered canvas. Anyway.
I don't know how you did that.
Thank you. I did it
So
quickly.
complicated.
Yeah, I'm looking at it from a distance. I can see things that need to be fixed, but it works okay. It's got a lot more color and vitality than that. That I can attest to. The rest of it, I don't know. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. Justin's in for Scott today, so I do appreciate that. And thanks anyone who's watching or who will watch. Thank you.
Yeah, and please share if you desire. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.